Hi everybody. So I got to thinking that in the spirit of conversation between, with this discussion between religion and atheism, that it'd be really important to understand what's going on in each other's heads, to really be able to put each other, even for just a second, in the other person's shoes, try and understand what is it that is driving this person's belief system. And I think this is equally important for both sides to be able to just take a second and say, well, they're a human being, they are an intelligent person. Why are they thinking this? What could they be thinking and why? So this video is a quick reading list of things on both sides of the discussion, some that are neutral on the whole discussion, but can offer some insight into what one or both sides might be thinking. So to start with, the easy ones, the holy books. We would want to start with the Bible, all different versions of it. There are slightly different wordings, King James, New American, New International, and certainly not necessary to read through all the versions straight through, but maybe just get a flavor for the different ways that they're wording in the different versions of the Bible. The Koran, of course. Islam is a very controversial and a controversial religion that's on the rise at the moment. Very important to understand more of that, I think, than is just in the news or quoted on YouTube videos. Maybe go through and find some random passages and just take a look at those by yourself. There's also the Talmud, which we know that the Old Testament of the Christian Bible is the entirety, the Hebrew Bible, the Torah. And then, like I said, there's this Talmud, which is where Jewish rabbis began commenting on the Hebrew Bible and began interpreting some of the rules and regulations, which is how you start to see things like kosher law appear. It's really actually very interesting. And for more information on that, it's a very good book to take a look at would be The Secular Bible by Jacques Berlinerblau. I'll spell that over on the side. It's a hard name to spell out, but this is, although it's called the Secular Bible, it's not an attempt to make a secular Bible or anything like that. It's a secular look at the whole Bible, Jewish, Christian, and there's also a chapter on the Quran as well. And it's just taking a look at things like the historical authors, the interpretations that the Bible has been given from its authorship straight up through the present, and what people think of this. And it doesn't take any moral stance on it one way or the other. It's just an analysis. So that's a good book to take a look at. I enjoyed that a lot. The Secular Bible. Then of course there are the books by the appropriately named Four Horsemen of Atheism. You have the book God is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens. Certainly a vitriolic book, but it really represents the depth to which some atheists feel religion is dangerous. And I think it's important for anybody, whether you be an atheist or a religious person, a proclaimed agnostic, or somebody who's simply on the fence about the whole thing, it's important to read this sort of book, because even though it is vitriolic, and I as an atheist admit that, it's a really pointed sort of representation of how some atheists feel, and that's important to understand for this dialogue to continue. Another in that vein is, of course, God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, and if Hitchens is vitriolic, Dawkins is outright provocative. He almost seems to be picking a fight, but like I said, although he may be saying things in an offensive manner, both Hitchens and Dawkins do a very good job of backing up their statements with, newspaper articles, historical events, things like that. So although you may not agree with their interpretation, I think it's important to take a look at what they're saying and why they're feeling the way they're feeling. We move from the British authors over to the American side of the Four Horsemen. We start with Daniel Dennett. Professor Dennett wrote the book breaking the spell, and his thesis really is that religion is a natural phenomenon. It's cultural, it is psychological, and using the precise means of measurement that we have come up with to study psychology, we can take a look at religion as a natural phenomenon, and the title of the book refers to the fact, breaking the spell, that some believers are worried that by analyzing it too closely, some sort of spell will be broken, it won't seem as mystical anymore. But Dennett argues that studying religion can be good for both sides of this discussion, that non-believers and believers alike have something to gain by studying religion. And I invite you, please, to take a look at that book, especially since my area is the study of religion. I appreciate what Professor Dennett is saying, and I encourage you to take a look at that. He's a little more moderated in his speech than the previous two authors. Going back a little bit to the sort of in-your-face side of things, we have the last of the Four Horsemen, Sam Harris, whose primary book is The End of Faith. And that is another one of these comprehensive books about the way religion is a danger, and how blind faith and belief without any sort of justification whatsoever is really very dangerous. And he has a lot to say in that book, but if you want sort of a more condensed version of his points, less than 100 pages, he has a book called Letter to a Christian Nation, also by Sam Harris. He just summarizes his points very quickly. It's a good introduction to the larger book, The End of Faith. Then we move past the atheist Four Horsemen to go back to religion briefly. I think it's important to be able to, for anybody of any belief system, again, it's important, I think, to be able to place yourself in the really subjective position of somebody else. So I recommend a book. It's called Blue Like Jazz. It's by Donald Miller, and it attempts to be non-religious commentary, semi-biographical, on Christian spirituality. He talks about his own personal subjective experience with Christian spirituality and how that occasionally was in line with religion, but not always. So just to get a sense of what people are feeling, whether or not you agree that the appropriate emotion or whatever, I think it's important to read a book like that. It doesn't really do too much with dogma. It's more about spirituality. And then quickly, just for the end here, two books that I've just started reading myself. Haven't finished them, but they appear very promising. The first isn't really religiously oriented. But it does have some things that we can apply to religion, social psychology paradigms, and it's really, the book is written for people who are not in the field, who don't study psychology or anything like that. It puts it in a very presentable, readable, palatable manner. It's called Opening Skinner's Box by Lawrence Slater. Skinner was a behaviorist in the mid-1950s or so, and behaviorism was simply, reward and punishment with animals, conditioning. But the book itself is about what exploded afterwards, all kinds of experiments, and it's very interesting, and it can be applied to a great deal of things, not just religion. I recommend that, not just for this conversation, but just for general interest. And the very last one I want to mention is more of a neuroscientific look, still moderately presentable, actually, moderately readable, even for somebody not in the field, despite being neuroscientific. It's called Minds and Gods by Todd Tremlin. I'm only a chapter 2 in, but it looks very promising so far. It talks about the neuroscientific basis for religion, and it seems very enjoyable. So all the above books I humbly recommend that anybody who's interested in this discussion take a look at, because these are sort of the kind of texts that people are thinking about on both sides of this debate as we have the discussion. So just to be able to communicate more effectively, to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, might be interesting to take a look at what the other people have to say in writing. Both sides have well-written ideas, I think. So I'll leave you with that, and as usual, Any comments, messages, video responses are absolutely welcome. Thank you.